You who were paying attention obviously didn't care about what happens in team meeting because the broker moment is actually the long form training that we have today as well. So I apologize in advance. Um, it was advertised as 16 ways to lose your license. It's actually 23. Aren't you excited? Because it actually did go to the letter W, so A through W. And so, and what I did is I took the letters of the alphabet and put numbers in there. So it is actually in the rules, the real estate rules, or it's in the code. And so this is literally how it's written. We started and my head was totally somewhere else. We got sidetracked a lot. So the first way you can lose your license is acting in any manner that fails to conform with accepted standards of real estate. For instance, I'm a brand new agent. I'm going to try and sell commercial. In fact, I'm going to write my own contracts. Well, that's a problem because you're not following the real estate standards. Does that kind of make sense? Whether it's sales, leasing, or management, anything that could jeopardize public health, safety, or welfare. So if you're driving intoxicated, it's amazing. That shows up a lot in the division newsletter. You ever notice that? Please don't have a DUI. If you're going to party hardy and do whatever, please do it at your home or someplace where you're not going to be having to depart. Is that okay? So public safety, and then the catch-all is really awesome. It violates any provision in this chapter. So this is all in Title 61, Chapter 2F of the division's rules. So Department of Commerce, it goes through all of them. This happens to be real estate. Second way you can lose your license, and every single one starts off with, and all of these are follow-up from an individual licensee may not. You may not require parties to acknowledge that they've received final copies of all documents before they actually got copies. If you're using a transaction coordinator and they send all the docs, say, here's the documents, please sign the doc receipt. That's perfect. If you send them the doc receipt and say, well, I promise to send you copies, that doesn't work. Does that kind of make sense? A lot of agents, especially commercial agents, forget that they're supposed to send copies of all the executed documents to their clients. I got my docs at Title. You didn't get any purchase agreements from Title. Title will only give you the closing documents. But everything that led up to those closing documents are the docs between you and your client, between your client and the other principal in that transaction. So make sure. Anyway, super important. Don't have them sign a doc receipt or sign a document and say, yeah, I got all the executed docs when they didn't. And I know we talked about this too. The old RepC was really fun because it actually had a doc receipt built into it. And so agents would have their buyers sign the doc receipt before it was ever seen by the sellers. Can't do that. And that's why they took it out. And just for your excitement, there's a brand new RepC coming, right, Amber? And it's awesome. It's actually pretty cool. Everything, all of the terms of the agreement are on page 1. It's going to take some getting used to, but it'll be official January 1. I think it'll be made available roughly September 1 or right after UAR. Yeah. So will it be valid then after that? Yeah. Okay. So they can start using it now? Oh, I thought it had been approved. That was why it was sent out. Oh, commission said yes. Now the AG gets to look at it. I think it's not bad. Does it have hiccups? Yeah. I still hate all right, just feedback when it comes to commission. If it says dollars or that if I leave it as is, someone could say, oh, I take the one that's left blank. So I always put not applicable in there. Say again. It does say and. Oh, okay. Thank you. Oof. Yeah. You can leave it blank now. Okay, let's move on. An individual licensee may not make a misrepresentation to the division. This is one of those 10 commandment things that are not suggestions. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Okay. this is not a class in the Bible. This is a class with the division of real estate. They believe from the outset that you're probably going to lie to them. Is that a fair assumption? Anybody dealt with the division before? I have. They just assume that you're out there to lie, cheat, or steal. And so be careful. And it's because they're dealing with people that do crazy things or people that make crazy accusations, and they have to investigate all of those. So anyway, so on your application, don't lie. And then when you're renewing, don't lie. And then if there's an investigation, please give them everything. Don't just give them the stuff that makes you look good. Give them everything, even if it makes you look like an idiot. And then by way of information, again, when you're communicating with someone, don't be a jerk and don't be snarky in text messages or emails, because if it gets investigated, the division will say, great, I want to see every text message between you and that other agent. I want to see every email between you and that other agent, or between your client and you. And if you're saying, oh, that you're so unprofessional, and you're going through that, that all shows up and it makes you look really bad. And so just keep in mind, you need to keep copies of all of your communications for at least 3 years. You Apple users, please use iMessage because you can pull it off your computer. Recommendation for you Android users, use Google Messages because you can get it from your computer and you can just copy and paste. It makes it a whole lot easier for the text message side. Whatever your email platform is, make sure that you're not destroying all your messages, because that, can be seen as, oh, they're trying to hide something. So keep all your stuff for at least 3+ years. That's how long the division has. An individual licensee may not propose, prepare, or cause to be prepared a document, agreement, or settlement statement, or other device that the licensee knows or should know does not reflect the true terms of the contract. Don't prepare a document. That's a lie. Again, that's a fake transaction. Who can help with an example? This contract is good for $1. Okay? Because a parent is selling a property to a child, and so they sell it for $50. When the child is actually giving them $500,000 for that property, but mom and dad don't want to pay taxes, and the child doesn't want to pay taxes, and they're going to actually report that sale. And I'm using extreme numbers, but don't way undersell, don't way oversell. So on the MLS, do we require accurate data? We do, because we want to know what the sales price of that property was. If you underreport or overreport and they don't match up with the settlement statements, that's going to be a problem. Or if you paid outside, double contracts is another example where we have the seller's actually going to give the buyer, let's say it's a short sale, and the seller is going to receive from the buyer an additional $10,000 or $20,000 on the side outside of the contract. That constitutes loan fraud, and there's other things. Does that kind of make sense? Don't be a party to that. Anyway, because we have so many, we get to keep zipping along. Don't participate in a transaction in which the buyer enters into an agreement that is not disclosed to the lender. You can't hide from the lender. Oh, I don't want to put any of the due diligence items in the contract because I don't want the lender to know that it needs a new roof. I don't want the lender to know that the lead-based paint has been exposed because the seller started doing a project on an old house and sanded all the paint down. Or whatever it is. You don't hide stuff from the lender. And also, if disclosed, it might have a material effect on the terms of granting the loan. For instance, we just found out this house is in a flood zone, and we didn't disclose that to a lender. Anyway, just watch out for loan fraud. Sheila, help me out. Is there anything else that I've missed on this kind of stuff? Of course not. No, but you do hear people say that. Oh, I always tell people, describe it with your lender. We'll do it on the outside. Hey, we'll pay you for carpeting or something like that on the outside. That's an inducement to a buyer because they're going to get cash from a seller or something in that scenario. I'm dealing with one right now where the house had meth, so all the carpet got ripped out. The seller said, we'll pay $3,500 of it. So the lender's aware that the seller's going to pay $3,500 that would have replaced the carpet with a like kind. The buyer said, no, but we want nicer stuff. So they're going to pay the $1,000 difference. That's fine, as long as the lender knows. Don't hide it. All that. Yes, ma'am, Jordana.
That we're not supposed to disclose things like meth.
Really?
In that, like, okay, I'll switch lenders. I'm gonna use Sheila
Just keep
for everything. Well, okay, the story was so we found out there was meth in the house. I went to the lender and was talking about it, and he's like, well, I can't know that there's meth in the house. And I was like, well, what if it's mediated? And he's like, well, then yeah, remediated. Well, then yeah. But this seller doesn't have funds to remediate the meth until after closing. So the remediation won't happen until after closing. So we got different bids on other things that needed to be done in the house to get the credit for the repairs that need to be done. That's not meth. Is that still bad? They're going to do it from the proceeds of the sale.
Yeah, just make sure. Let me tell you something. Disclose. I know that it could hurt the deal even, right? But I would rather Sheila was aware of it. Hey, they found meth in the house. That's literally the house situation we had. And we're dealing with other dumb stuff, but meth is meth and it needs to be remediated. We have an incredibly good resource with Meth Mob right here in our building because I was over there knocking on the door a couple of different times. Okay, they want to know why they didn't clean the inside of the appliances, the stove, that. And she said, those things get killed inside when you turn it on. Washers wash things and it rinses it down the drain. So it's meth. If clothes that are contaminated with meth are cleaned because washers wash it. And if you have your coat that's a contaminated coat, you throw it in the dryer, it's vented out of the house. It doesn't stay in the house. So we don't have to clean those. So it's more dangerous to get into the dryer than it is to have meth contaminated clothing in a dryer. Anyway, so nice to hear that. But she also gave me contacts at the Salt Lake County Health Department who could fix something like that. We have to move on, Rob, but what next?
Well, quick question then. Are you obligated to tell the lender that there's meth in the house?
Is meth a material fact? Is it a material fact?
Money they cost and don't bring it to the lender's attention.
Just by saying don't bring it to the lender's attention, I think is problematic. That's my opinion. Are there any lenders in the room? I know Sheila's in here. Are there any other lenders in the room? Is it problematic, Sheila? Is it problematic if an agent says, oh, I don't want to bring that to the lender's attention, whether it's meth or lead-based paint or any other? Is it a problem if we don't let you know about it? Yeah, it's a problem because that constitutes loan fraud because the lender got left out of the loop. I know there are originators that say, I don't want to know about it. I hear that, but I think your better lenders are going to say, we need to know about it because you're asking someone else to invest money in a property that may not ever be fixed. Yeah, go ahead. Wait, nice and loud.
You've heard but can't confirm that there's been meth.
Rumors don't count, but if there's meth in a house, that means someone did a test and they would have shared that with you as a listing agent or as a seller and all that. And so that's kind of the standard. If I have a home inspection that says there's a problem with the electrical system, I need to say, hey, there are some repairs from the inspection report, and I'm going to put those things in. I'll get those repairs negotiated and say, for this, I need this amount of dollars to resolve that. And you can put that in resolution due diligence addendum. But just getting back to this one here, don't not disclose. I don't have to make a list of all the problems that are with the house, but we have a list from a home inspection. If the lender asks for a copy of the home inspection, share it. If most lenders don't, right? Because home inspectors are, by their very nature, good at it. They will find what's broken and what will remain broken, and after you move in, unless you've negotiated that repair. That's literally my script that I use in my buyer presentation. After we get it under contract, we're going to get a home inspector, and that's what he or she, and most of the time it's a he, will take care of. Anyway, anything that has a material effect, make sure that you're disclosing. Is that fair? I mean, if you were the investor and you're investing in first trust deed mortgages, wouldn't you want to know if there's a problem with the house? Let's say that the structure of the roof is not sound. Should that be disclosed to a lender? Yeah, probably. It's not meth, but it's construction. Anyway, let's move on to number 6. We're up to 6. There's only a few to go. An individual licensee may not use or propose to use of a double contract. Is that okay? Rob, I'm going to sell you the house for $300, but you're going to write me a check for another $2, because I don't want my lender to know that you're giving me $2. You're going to pay me $5. I don't want the county to know. I don't want, whoever to know about that. Double contracts. Don't have contracts on the side, that someone's going to pay something else in addition. Anyway, there's a lot of different ways of double contracting, so we won't do that. What is that? Yep. Go ahead, Sheila.
I think two different making an offer to make one offer look better than other offers, even though the lower offer is really not expecting to get this deal, right? But you're trying to make the other offer look better by putting 2 offers in at the same time for 2 different. You know what I'm saying?
So what you're saying is you have a bogus offer coming in. I don't think that's a double contract, but that comes down to, am I being transparent with my client? So if a listing agent gets, hey, I'm going to pick on Jordana just because she's fun to pick on. Jordana, will you please have your buyer write an offer that's $100,000 below list? Because I have another offer coming in, so that I can show the seller 2 offers and say, look, this is what one buyer wrote, and here's what this one's $100,000 better. If I encourage that behavior, that's fraudulent behavior. I can't speak English anymore. But Jordana absolutely would say no. But she's used to rejecting me, so that's okay. No way, hose head. Yeah, I heard it loud and clear. Thank you. All right, individual licensees may not. Now, this has been really funny because agents will talk about this, and all of you are going to get copies of this in the email because all these slides are in there. But you may not place a sign on real property without written consent of the property owner. And there's a variation of it also. I want to say, is it the next one? Nope, it's not. Or the property owner has to give you permission. So, I'm just going to put a sign. Let's do this. Agents do this all the time. They go put a sign out in front of their house, just to get attention. Now, an aside, I happen to be serving as an ecclesiastical leader for a local church, and I put a sign in my yard because I just didn't have anything going on in my life. And I just thought my neighbors got really upset about that. Actually, others came and said, when can you move? So, all I'm saying is I did. I literally took a listing agreement, signed it, had my wife sign it, and we put a ridiculous number on it. I just wanted calls. I was looking for buyers. Make sure you have a written agreement from the owners. So you can do it. And I'll pick on Amber. Amber, you and your husband can put a sign in your yard as long as you both signed a listing agreement. But don't fake it. Don't make shortcuts. I can't tell you how many agents have contacted me. Yeah, I'm selling my own house. What paperwork do I have to do? And I just scratched my head and said, let's see, is there a seller? Well, yeah, it's me. Great. All the paperwork that you would do, you treat yourself like you would any other seller. I'm going to buy a property. What do I need to do? Treat yourself like any other buyer, except include the disclosure of interest. Okay? Is that hard? You may not take a net listing. Who wants to describe net listing? What's a net listing? Oh, Chrissy, will you? Will you tell me what is a net listing? No. Nope, that's not it.
The net listing is when you're basically saying, I will guarantee you X number of dollars and I get anything over that.
Yeah, so I'm selling your $600,000 house, and I say, you know what? I will guarantee that your house will sell for $500,000, and I get anything over that. So if it sells for $620,000, I get $120,000. That's cool. It's also illegal, and you will lose your license. Okay, no net listings. Okay, I've had agents now. Can you understand the variations of that? Oh, well, if I sell it for at this price, then my commission is this. If I sell it for, it starts to get into that area. Just make sure that it's not that yours keeps going up with the more that the property sells for. Some agents say, I will guarantee that it will sell for 600. If it doesn't, I'll lower mine. Yeah, Cameron, nice and loud. Not net listing, but this is not a net listing, but the question is, can you be a wholesaler and be an agent? The answer is yes. Generally, and Cameron already knows this, I frown upon it. Wholesaling is one way of getting a property sold. You go and tie up a property with a contract, and you say, I reserve the right, I want to be able to market this contract. And so I may have told the seller, I'm willing to pay X for your house, but I can sell it for X plus 50,000. As soon as the seller asks you, what's my house worth? I think under the code of ethics, you're obligated to tell them that it's worth X plus 50. I believe that's your obligation. There are certain situations where wholesaling makes sense. They say, I need to get out of Dodge right now. And so I'll take 50,000 off, knowing that I'm taking it in the shorts, but I'm getting my house sold in a shorter period of time. If whoever has the greatest need is in the least best or least strongest negotiated position. If I have to sell this week, I'm probably going to take a lower price. If I have 6 months, or I'm willing to let it sit for 60 days because I know that's what the typical days on market is right now in today's market. And again, look at your different communities. It's different in every community. I'll tell you right now, we have just shy of 4 months of inventory in Utah County, but I have less than 3 months of inventory in Lehigh. If I'm making a Lehigh listing, I know that just because of the nature of communities and neighborhoods, it's going to sell faster than it will if I'm in Salem. Salem has about 5 months of inventory. Does that kind of make sense? But if I live in Salem and I need to sell it right now, I might consider doing that. Anyway, wholesaling is a different animal that has its place. But most people that are doing wholesaling, and I don't mean agents, most companies will go out there, they will tie up a property dirt cheap, as cheap as they can, and then they will go out and market that property for as much as they possibly can because they want to make the delta. Kind of like a net listing. But yes, it's legal, but make sure that we have a conversation before you do it. You may not sell listed properties other than through the listing broker. As an agent, you have to sell your property through the brokerage. I know it's crazy, but you can't sell it as, well, I'm Wise Guy Real Estate. That's my DBA right now. But I can't sell it. It has to come through KW Westfield. When you take commissions, it has to come from your broker. The seller or the buyer may not send a check to you directly. If they do, that's a fast track to losing your license. Okay. This let you know, there are some big ones. That's one of the big ones. People will do that. Or, getting money from your client after the fact and say, hey, here's $2,000. Thanks for doing such a great job. Don't do it. Okay. Licensees may not subject a principal to paying double commission without the principal's informed consent. Okay, we've seen some of that. You're working with the buyer hates their agent and they want to work with you. And you say, I can't work with you because you've already obligated yourself to someone else. I don't care. I'll work with you. I'll pay them as well. Then they get to sign a document saying, I understand that I'll be paying two buyer agents, two buyer brokerages and all that. Your listing agreement is kind of built into, yes, Rob.
And, sellers paying buyer's agent and the buyer's agent is also paying buyer's agent.
No. And I'll tell you why in a second. But really quickly, a buyer or a seller, let's say the seller hates their listing agent and they said, I'm going to pay your brokerage anyway because I really want it sold. And so I really want to work with you, Rob. I want you to sell my house. Even though I'm working with Brand X Real Estate over there and they have it listed, I want you to find a buyer for it. So they knowingly, and I would make sure that you stayed in there. I understand that I've obligated myself to two brokerages. To be that blunt in the language, then you have informed consent. Something like that. To answer your question, in the REPC, it says seller's going to pay the buyer's brokerage X, whatever that number is. If that buyer agent collects, let's say the seller's paying 2%, the buyer agent has a buyer broker agreement for 3%, they can, depending on how their agreement is written, they can say, buyer, you bring 1% to the table to cover the delta because the seller paid 2 of the 3, you can do that. So that's not a double payment. Yeah. Yeah. But the buyer doesn't have to be aware. They know they owe 3, but in the REPC, it says the seller is going to cover 2 in that scenario that we discovered. So it can be, but if the seller's paying 3, you can't ask the buyer to bring 3 because that violates the rule in that you can't collect more than what your buyer broker agreement allows you to collect.
And the seller pay me 3 and the buyer pay me 3.
Correct. That would be a violation of the settlement from the case. And I can't remember the Sitzer case, Sitzer Burnett. So don't do it. Yeah. All right. You may not enter or attempt to enter into a concurrent agency representation when the licensee knows or should know that the principal, the buyer or the seller, has an existing agency representation agreement with another licensee. That was a fight that I just put up with. What kinds of questions do you ask a buyer? Are you currently do you have a representation agreement with another agent? How many of them will answer that affirmatively and understanding that? Very few will. But I would ask, who's your realtor? I'm doing an open house. I'll say, great, who's your agent? If they don't know who their agent is, that's a clue. How long have you been looking? That might be another one. Have you written any offers in the last month, 2 or 3 months? That may be another clue that they have an agent. Yeah. I'm sorry.
With the MLS, don't they catch that there's the same properties being entered in by 2 different agents?
Oh, on a listing, yes, they would know that. The only way that can happen is if the first listing agent cancels the listing, and the second listing agent goes in. Let's say it's a wholesaler, goes in, and then they post a listing saying this is that same property that it was listed, but the seller has a contract for sale. That's a little different. But in this one, I'm picking on buyers because that's usually where we have the most problems. How many times you've had a buyer agent say, "Yeah, I've never signed a buyer broker agreement," and you find out later they did. if that happens, please let me know. Let's have a conversation before we totally acquiesce, because you could be violating your buyer broker if you put a buyer under contract. And then the buyer ends up losing the house. Who do they sue? They're going to sue you and me. So, watch out. We used to be really lazy. We say, oh, if I'm not getting paid, I'm out. And yet we put the buyer in a precarious position because the seller could be sitting on another offer. And the buyer now lost the house because you said, yeah, we should give it to the other agent. So be careful on that one. Oh, there's some fun ones in here. You may not pay a finder's fee or give valuable consideration to an unlicensed person. This is the referrals, right? Up to $250 or less for appreciation for an unsolicited referral. Unsolicited. Thou shalt not advertise. Because I tried this once and my broker slapped me down, as he should have. I was brand new. And I said, hey, I'll buy your golf if you send me someone that wants to buy or sell real estate. Right? That sounds reasonable. That's less than $50, but can't do that. I would love to work with friends and family, but I can't offer compensation or something of value for that referral. They are going to see a trend if you tend to compensate people. That's unsolicited. Let's take it a step further. I had my mentor offered a $50 gift card to Home Depot every time somebody sent him a referral. On about the fourth referral, this guy came and said, hey, this is the fourth time I've sent you something. Would you mind sending me something? If you were to give me a gift card, would you make it Lowe's instead? And he said, sure. He's happy to. Does that make sense? You can do that. Or if you were giving out Chili's gift cards and says, you know what? I really would prefer R&R barbecue. So that's not a problem. But you're trying to compensate the behavior of giving you referrals. You're not offering, saying, hey, send me referrals, I'll do that. That's why there's some wonderful KW training out there. They'll talk about all the time, hey, come in and, we have a pie for you. It's Thanksgiving time. We want to give you a pie. But if you send us a referral, we're going to give you a can of whipped cream as well. So you can't do that because now you've offered something of value for a referral. It's no longer an unsolicited referral. Okay. And the same thing with down there, property management stuff. Again, compensation up to $250 of value. That said, let's pretend that the buyer closed or did something with you at that time. Well, that's awesome. You can, I would, again, I'm going to give some value maybe to that person that gave me a referral. I might give them another gift to say, hey, thanks so much for that closing that I got. It's not for the referral. It was for the closing. So anyway, you can do other things, but that's just a marketing thing at that point because I'm a pushy agent and I like to market a lot. So I might take you to lunch and say, hey, this is a marketing lunch. I want to remind you that I'm a pushy real estate agent. And then now let's talk about the important stuff. How's your family? And all of that. I literally done that because then I can write off lunch. I get all of it, not a portion of it. Anyway, crazy that way. Individual licensees may not accept a referral fee from a lender or a mortgage broker. Sheila, I've sent you business. Where's mine? You can't. I cannot accept a referral fee. And there's some corollaries here too. Individual licensees may not act as a real estate agent or broker in the same transaction with a licensee who is a mortgage loan originator, a lending manager or principal lending manager, PLM, or if they're an appraiser trainee, if they're an escrow agent, title company, or they provide other title services. In fact, what you'll find is title companies are a little bit, Annette's here. Annette, if you had a real estate license, what would you have to do before you could work for Real Advantage? you'd have to inactivate your real estate license before you can work with a title company. That's the standard practice in title companies, I believe. And so, yeah, you don't get to do both. Now, we have some husband-wife teams here in the brokerage. He's a lender. She's a realtor. They're both realtors. So when that comes upon with working with buyers, he'll do the loan. She will do the real estate work. And so they can collect two commissions, but he can't do both. He can't be the agent and the lender on the same transaction with that buyer. Yeah. That's a Utah thing. It's a Utah thing. I don't care about other states. I only care about your license in Utah. I'm crazy that way. Okay. Anyway, so going back, you can't accept referral fees from lenders, mortgage brokers, and you may not act in two different roles that are tied to RESPA. Okay, the Real Estate Settlement and Procedures Act. All right, moving on. We're getting close, and I'm in trouble. You may not act or attempt to act as a limited agent in any transaction where you have an interest in the property. If you're a buyer, you may not buy your own listings and represent the seller. If you're a seller, you may not in any way represent the buyer. Buyer has to be unrepresented. Let's take it a step further. If you're Dean and you're the principal broker in this brokerage, when I sold my home, I actually had Mike Burns set up to list my property to sell my home if one of you folks brought an offer on my home. And even then he couldn't do it. He was going to represent the buyer in that particular one on your behalf I was going to pay him $500 to do it because I can't be limited. Does that make sense? And so even in that case, because I represent your clients as well, you couldn't bring an offer on my personal property. Is that crazy? But that's the law. So that's how it works. And so I had it set up when I sold my house 2 years ago. Just in case one of you brought an offer. I'm bitter that none of you brought an offer. And so I'm leaving. Really quick, licensees may not make a counter offer. Now, this is something you'll see it in Idaho. I definitely saw it in Virginia when I was looking at offers on stuff. You may not strike out, white out, or substitute new language, otherwise altering the boilerplate provisions in a Rep C or, contract language. You may not use strikeouts. Okay, literally. Now, the new loan will software will actually let you do that. The state of Utah will not. So thou shalt not. Okay, don't strike anything out. Use addenda. If you're going to change anything above signature lines, use an addendum. Easy peasy. Okay. You may not advertise or offer to sell or lease a property without written consent of the owners, or if it's listed, the listing broker. So if you're marketing somebody else's listing, you better have something in writing saying, yeah, you have permission to market this listing. Okay. Individual licensees may not advertise, offer to sell or lease a property at a lower price than listed without written consent of the seller or lessor. How many people have said, yeah, this is an overpriced listing in this meeting? Did you just violate your fiduciary to your seller? Yes. Don't do it. If someone comes and says, hey, how much will the seller take? I'll say, all I can tell you legally is we have the property marketed at $650,000. We would encourage you to write an offer. And I don't care at what number, but you don't say, you know what, I know they'll take 6.25 because you just violated your agreement. Unless you have something in writing from your seller saying, if somebody asks, you make it 6.25, you better have an addendum to your ERS for that. Does that make sense? Man, protect your clients and represent them. Crazy. You may not represent on any form or contract that the individual is holding client funds without actually having to receive the funds. Do not send the confirmation of earnest money receipt before you receive the check. We've come really close to that a couple of times. The buyer sent a copy of a check and said, check's in the mail, and it never came. Does that constitute a problem? Yeah, it does. Don't say that we've received it until we have. You can show that the ACH has been started with deposit link and say that we have collected funds because the buyer did all the steps to initiate an ACH or a wire to KW Westfield. And I say wire very loosely. We don't take wires. Okay. Don't say we got money until we have money. Crazy. Individuals may not, when acting as a limited agent, disclose any information given to the agent by either principal that would likely weaken their bargaining position. I use the dumb example this way, super easy. This is really dual agency. Legally, it's called limited agency. I say dual because you're representing both principals, the buyer and the seller, on the same transaction. Number one, you may not do it here, but if you were, what it means is like, hey, seller told me they'd take half. And I go to the seller. Buyer said they'd pay double. You can't do that. That's my dumb example. Don't do it. You may not disclose, make any use of a short sale demand letter outside of the purchase transaction for which it is issued. That's one you have to be super careful on. You can say, I have an approved price for buyer X, and I know this is a number that the lender would accept. They're saying that's a violation. We have to be super careful when you're dealing with short sales. We're going to see more, possibly over the next couple of years. So watch out for that. You can just say, in general, I know that I've seen some for another buyer. You need to write your offer, however you want it to be. Don't steer people's offers. We're almost there. In a short sale, you may not, in a short sale, have the seller sign a document allowing the licensee to lien the property. Well, I put some improvements on your property so it would sell. And so I'm going to lien your property. Yeah, you don't get to do that. Not on a short sale because the bank is taking a short of a full payoff. So you can't lien it and be one of the liens against the property. So don't do it. And the last one has to do mostly with short sales, but you may not charge any fee that represents the delta, the difference between total concessions authorized by a seller and the actual amount of the buyer's closing costs. So in other words, buyers need $15,000, but the sellers have another $30,000. This is using easy numbers. I can do the math in my head. You can't collect that $15,000 fee and say, yeah, I have a fee. That's 15 grand. That's my short sale fee, not a commission, a short sale fee for my company. Can't do that. And then in a short sale, the sale price approved by the lender and the total amount required to clear encumbrances on the title to close the transaction. So if we know that there's X amount needed to close a transaction, you can't collect anything that's above that. Let's say that $50,000 was granted and it's only, $25,000 is needed to close it. You can't collect that $25,000 difference. And that's it. Do any of those things you could lose? You could. I won't say you will. You could lose your license. Some of those things, this is, I think, one of them because it's kind of like a net listing. Yeah, these things are the bigger deal ones. And there's some others. So anyway, read through those. If you have questions, let's talk. But was that just way fun or what? Anyway, thanks for coming and putting up with it.